Yo. Welcome to my first video on the second chakra, the sacral chakra. Today we're going to talk about it, what it's related to, and how mastering it can help you. So first off, your sacral chakra is about right here. I'm going to stand on my tippy toes. It's about 6 to 8 inches above your root chakra, and it has to do with your sex organs and other very essential organs that are down there. It represents and is metaphysically connected to the idea of sensuality and your senses and pleasure. Since, like your sexuality and like excretion, since these things are non-negotiable, it's best to learn how to master them moving forward so that you are not at the whims of your searching for pleasure or your quest to renounce pleasure in search of spiritual enlightenment or whatever. I want to do away with a lot of this riffraff and get right down to what it is and how it relates to you. So I will be honest, I am mostly a Gnostic these days. I studied a lot of Buddhism, and I came from Episcopalianism, Christianity. Many of the teachings of these systems, particularly Gnosticism, and I don't agree with this, and I'll tell you why, these teachings tend to tell you to renounce your senses and pleasure. They kind of teach you that pleasure and the joys of the senses are baked into the sin or the desire of the world, and that is what keeps you bound to this miserable physical experience and yada, yada, yada. So I think the reason we have that to a large degree is moral in nature. I think that we rightfully have a fear of indulgence baked into our society. And it makes sense because overconsumption and giving too much, sacrificing too much of your life for immediate pleasure is not a sustainable way to run a society. You need people who can sacrifice immediate pleasure so that we can get along with each other, so that we can function. I think because of that, and because of that quote unquote necessity of society, we have this feeling baked in that any expression of enjoyment at our own pleasure or pleasure in the senses is therefore bad, or that you should feel guilty if you're enjoying pleasure too much. The word hedonism is very popular again, and I think that as we have been advertised that so much to have all of these products that take advantage of our desire for the sensation of pleasure, there's also a reemergence of the renunciation of the physical in order to get back in touch with themselves. And I'm not saying that any of that is wrong. I just don't think that Reiki, and I know that I don't teach the renunciation of pleasure and the renunciation of your senses. I don't think we should do without these things that are so intrinsic in our being. So how do we master them? Well, before we do that, I want to do a quick word, because I know there's a lot of really smart people in my subscribers who think of a lot of these things and may have thought of this before. So I just want to say right off the bat, your senses can lie to you. They're not perfect. And so they're not God. They can tell you wrong data. However, I think that the cases in which your senses out and out lie to you are actually a lot rarer than we give them credit for. I think if you're very unhealthy, if there's something wrong with your brain, if you are just angry and you have a very malaise, bad vibration, your senses are just going to reinforce what you already know anyway. So I'm not saying that they can't be wrong, and I'm not saying that due to operator fault, operator error. They can't tell you wrong information. Something that I think is a great example of this, there's this scene in A Christmas Carol where Ebenezer Scrooge is visited by the ghost of his old business partner. And even though he is clearly seeing this guy, this apparition in front of him, he says, oh, no, like this could be anything. I could have a spot of indigestion. I could have some bad mustard. I could have eaten some bad yogurt. I really like the line, there's more gravy than grave about you. And yeah, it's totally true. Like, if your body is off, your senses will be off. And also, like, I think a lot of this comes from the effect of drugs as well. This idea that your senses lie to you. Like, yeah, if you're drunk or you took some LSD or some psilocybin, then yeah, your senses are going to do different things because your brain is doing different things than you're used to. So I just wanted to get that out there and say, I really think that sensuality and accessing your senses gets a really bad rap, not only because of religious and societal reasons, but also because if you're not in a good way, your senses aren't going to be in a good way either. And I just want to say, I don't think that's our senses' fault. I think that we underestimate how the state of the operator can affect things. So how do we master these things? Well, the trick is the foundation. That stuff I said about being an operator, it's not exactly true, I don't think. You are a being of consciousness. You have that consciousness either from the divine spark or 13 billion years of evolution. I mean, take your pick. And rather than thinking of yourself as a kind of blue-collar factory worker where your consciousness is here and you operate a forklift, and the forklift is your body and the forklift is your senses, and you just command things from up here, I invite you to think about things in a slightly different way. Rather than you being some homunculus pilot in your body telling your mechanical form to do its mechanical things, I invite you to think about your experience, including your senses, as crafted and created by your thoughts, your intent, and your emotions. And deeper than that, your vibration, not just necessarily your emotion in the moment, but your emotional state as you move throughout the world. And that state, that energy, that communion with your consciousness into your form, into your body, into your energy as you move through the world, creates this pool of the universal energy force that is you. And that connection with that pool, that connection with your source, that connection with your connection to source, once you start treating that as primary and you allow a feeling of good vibes, of this enlivenment to fill you, you can extend that and consciousness itself into your senses, whether it's one or whether you can rock all five at the same time. You can taste your food. You can see the colors of the plants. You can breathe in and smell the wind under your nose. And as I've been saying, this is a great way just to get into the feeling of touch as you feel the Reiki kind of dance in between your hands, you know? And I think once you start engaging your senses this way, flowing your consciousness through them rather than sitting back and, oh, we're just going to do this and use as little energy as possible because we only have so little energy and we don't want to devote too much to anything that we're doing. Give yourself to your senses. Doesn't mean go out and spend all your money. It doesn't mean drink every bottle at the bar, but allow the feeling of yourself to flow through your senses. And then your mind, your body, and your senses can all work at once. And then you can find your power and you can find your Reiki. And I'll be honest, like with that power, you can do anything. So have a great weekend, guys. Good hearing from you. Have a great Halloween, and like and subscribe.